The Opinion, Michael J. here. So we're going to discuss now Davos, Switzerland, World Economic Forum, and Donald Trump, the new president of the United States, number 45, is now number 47. Felt like a sneeze was coming on. Maybe it was because I said Trump. So nonetheless, we're going to start off with, let's see, CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Network. Actually, one of the few independent broadcasters that actually broadcast some decent news. Pierre Poilievre would like to take them off the map like Stephen Harper tried. Anything to suppress and oppress free speech. It's unbelievable what these guys do. Just unbelievable. Wise guy, eh? Yeah, Mo. Okay, so here we go. This gentleman.
Donald Trump has taken his threats against Canada to the global stage. Just days into his latest term as U.S. president, Trump delivered a speech today to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, remotely. He continued to insist this country treats the United States unfairly and again suggested the solution is for Canada to become the 51st state.
One thing we're going to be demanding is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to
demanding respect. Like, how insecure is this president of the United States? How insecure is the people of the United States to vote this guy into power? Now, the question you really need to be asking right now is, are you witnessing the fall of the latest Roman Empire? That's really what you need to ask yourselves. Is this the fall of the latest Roman Empire? Why does this president or the United States have a difficult, very difficult way of working with people? They have a real hard time getting out of their own ego and working with people and countries to make it a better world. Instead, it's just bully pulpit time. That's all it is, bully pulpit time. This is all this guy is. And the consciousness of the United States of America bought into it. Canada's never going to be the 51st state. Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith might sell out to that idea. But if you keep the liberals in power, and the liberals are not the perfect solution, they're the best solution right now comparative to what the conservatives and the NDP are offering. That's just simple fact, just based on facts. And anybody that says otherwise, you're not looking at the facts. That's my point.
have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. And if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you.
Yeah, and then you need a hernia operation. It's going to cost you $20,000 if you become a state. The problem with Canada is a good country, one of the best in the world. Not perfect, but one of the best in the world. But here's the issue. The United States has a problem with continuity. And every 4 years, you got a change in direction depending on who is president, the ideologies. And there's just too much corruption and money dollars influencing what's going on. So corporate influence has become a huge, huge issue. And so that's dominating the world landscape. And you really have to think that maybe corporate terrorism is more an issue of any type of terrorism. Corporate terrorism and greed and money. And everything can be changed as far as the monetary system, but nobody's looking at it from that perspective because you've got these people that are holding on to power that are greed. So you've got a pyramid sitting at the top. Instead of lifting the people up, Biden was the first one that went from the middle and then down. It should be from the bottom, lifting up. And this is where you need to invert the pyramid and make it work for the people.
Et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years, and it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit. We don't need them to make our...
You don't have a deficit, buddy. It's a trade deficit. And the trade deficit means you're not out one single dollar. It means you're bringing in goods in that you do not produce yourself to help support your economy. And this is where this guy doesn't get it. Adolf Hitler didn't get it. This guy doesn't get it. Another thing between the early 1930s, Germany, make Germany great again. That was the slogan. You see some parallels here? Make America great again. And then you got Elon Mussolini doing a Nazi friggin' salute right on national television. And then you got people trying to convince themselves that that's not what he's doing. You talk to any young student of history in Germany, and they'll say right away, that's a Nazi salute. No questions or doubts about it. So, this trade deficit is bullshit. The fact that he's saying Canada's bringing millions of immigrants in illegally is bullshit. Canada's bringing in fentanyl in. If 99 grams over a course of a year of fentanyl is a lot, there's something seriously wrong with this guy's math. Or maybe he doesn't understand math, but it's more to it than that. And I'll explain exactly what I mean. You look at every nomination for a cabinet position, all those people, for the most part, are not qualified for their positions. You've seen that in Germany. Make Germany great again, make America great again. Like, how insecure are you that you need to make yourself great again? The fact of the matter is, because you're starting to try to bully the world, or there's a little bit more going on here than people realize, because Trump was laundering money with Putin, and they were laundering money for the Colombian cartel, laundering armaments out of the United States of Russia, and then illegally bringing them into the United States and other markets around the world to be sold on the black market. And this guy Trump was part of it. There's more going on here than you realize. This guy's does not have clean hands. He's not working for the people. He's working for himself.
Cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody. So, just as an example.
Okay, so let's just for an example. We don't need America. Canada does not need America because America is not a reliable trading partner. It's not a reliable partner, period. You can't trust them. You really can't trust them. So Canada's better trying to do the best they can in dealing with this new administration for now and start building new alliances with new trading partners that has some continuity to it and is more respectful in a two-way situation to deal fairly. Simple as that. And that's the way Canada should go.
For more on Trump's remarks, let's bring in the CBC's Chris Reyes. She joins us live from Washington. And Chris, this economic forum gets a lot of international attention. It would seem at this point Trump is sending a message not just to Canada, but beyond. And it is now numerous times in the past several weeks that Trump has said, some would say threatened, to make Canada the 51st state or through economic force or annexation, whatever word you want to do. But this is now almost relentless, almost daily, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was very clear about who he was talking to from those remarks. He was speaking from Washington to this global audience in Davos, Switzerland. Those remarks that he made about Canada pretty extensively about what he wants to change in terms of relations between the two countries happened in the Q&A. And we were actually waiting to see if he would specifically mention Canada in the speech. And when he didn't, we thought he wasn't going to get to it. But obviously he did in that Q&A. But what he did talk about in the speech that affects Canada, let's start with NATO, because obviously, Andrew, that's an alliance that we're a part of. Trump has threatened to pull out of NATO in the past. The United States is the largest contributor to NATO defense. And of course, if they were to leave or check out, that will leave a big hole for all of the other allies in.
Leave a big hole? Let's understand one. Let's be clear on one fact. The only party that has ever activated Article 5 of NATO is the United States of America. And all the other countries around the world, including Canada, has participated to help the Americans. The only country that has actually utilized and activated Article 5 is the United States of America. And the fact that we have to become more of, what is this security thing? What is this thing about wars? I thought this guy was a no-war guy. Like, why are we spending or thinking of spending more on armaments? Why are we not getting away from that nonsense? Wasting that kind of money. You know, we're not... Are we human beings or are we animals? Like, what's going on here? Are we not evolving? Can we not learn to work together? Or do we have just these certain type of people that want to benefit for themselves and use the country as a piggy bank for their own initiatives and egos? And this is what you really need to ask yourself. Are you getting caught up in this who is me thing instead of coming from the heart?
In that organization. Now, he didn't say this time around that the U.S. would pull out of NATO, but he did lay out these conditions.
As we restore common sense in America, we're moving quickly to bring back strength and peace and stability abroad. I'm also going to ask...
Strength and peace through military bullying, spending of money on military, showmanship. Is that a real positive, uplifting experience for people? Increase defense spending to 5% of GDP? Just let America go, folks. They obviously don't care about anybody else but themselves. And you really have to worry. This guy Trump was kissing Putin's ass in Helsinki, but then he makes out that he's not really in tight with Putin. And then he says China is the threat. And then he tells Xi Jinping of China to negotiate with Putin with the Ukraine. You know, here's the deal. You got Trump that wants to take over America, just like 1930s Germany. You got Putin that wants to take over Europe, like 1930s Europe. And you got Xi Jinping that wants to create his own dynasty as well. And so these guys are working together at the expense of all the people around the world. Are you going to buy into this nonsense? Or are you going to move on from that and start electing leaders that are going to work for the people, not against the people? And this is really what's at the crux right now.
All NATO nations to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP, which is what it should have been years ago. It was only at 2%, and most nations didn't pay until I came along. I insisted that they pay, and they did.
This thing that they pay. Like, this is another friggin' nonsensical argument he's making. All of a sudden, like, America is paying and nobody else is paying. Just makes no sense, and you buy into this crap. And it's real crap.
Because the United States was really paying the difference at that time, and it was unfair to the United States.
And now, Andrew, Canada, of course, falls into that category of not meeting NATO defense spending. Trump did not lay out what the United States would do if he didn't, if other countries did not meet that condition. And other parts that are particularly
Yeah, but here's the issue. The spending for defense spending is within the country. So if it's Canada, Denmark, etc., the fact of the matter is when any one of these countries like Canada, Denmark, or Germany has to participate in a NATO excursion or situation to help people, every one of them have been there as they should be. And all of NATO has been there for only one person under Article 5 of NATO to defend, and that is to the defense of the United States of America. The only one that's ever utilized Article 5 of NATO has been the United States.
relevant to Canada, Trump's big criticism of the Paris climate deal, which he called one-sided. Canada is, of course, a signatory of that deal. He also talked about scrapping the Green New Deal here in the United States, called it a scam. And this is a program that has parallels, not just in Canada, but across the globe. So in this speech, Andrew, Trump is obviously casting himself as a banner holder for these policy positions.
So the Green New Deal's a scam. Let Jasper, Western Canada, Jasper burnt to the ground. California, over the last few weeks, burning to the ground. And it's a scam. Got to wake up. You can't keep punting that football down the field. It's already too late. We had a situation back in the 70s where the ozone layer, we woke up, we changed the way we did things, and averted a disaster that way. Sooner or later, you got to wake up to what's going on right now. And people, you have to wake up to that. If you've got children and the children of your children, and if you want that to have a good, joyful, and happy experience, you've got to address these things. And it can be done where it doesn't have to be pain and suffering like everybody's making it out to be.
So nationalist, populist, anti-regulatory, skeptical of global coalitions and government-directed response to climate change. The big question is, will this embolden the CEOs and world leaders in those rooms to also take up these talking points? And that's really the shift that we are going to be closely watching with this Trump administration.
Or you're going to let greed rule. And that's the situation that you have to think about. Are you going to let greed rule the day? And greed be the determining factor to cause pain and suffering for people? It makes no sense, folks. Now let's look at another way of looking at this from maybe a different perspective. Let us know in comments what you think, because I'm going to give you different perspectives here.
Trump, who appeared via live stream at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And back with us to break down what we just heard, NBC's Kelly O'Donnell and Christine Roman. So, Christine, first, a lot there. Yeah. Any obvious fact checks we need to get out of the way?
Well, he's talking a lot about inflation in the United States. And just a fact check there, inflation was much higher in the 80s when Donald Trump was in his 30s. That was 14% inflation. We're back down to 2.9%. But the sting of inflation is one of the things that really got him into office. And he's pledging that his policies will lower inflation.
The sting of inflation got him into power again. Meanwhile, he's the guy that created the inflation boondoggle to begin with. And it was a worldwide situation due to a pandemic that we haven't seen in 100 years. So you people have to really wake up and understand what's going on around you instead of doing a knee-jerk reaction because the price of eggs are so high. This guy is going to be our savior. Well, guess what? Your price of eggs have gone up since he's been in power. He's no savior. Everything he's agreed to, basically, he's lied about. He said when he becomes president-elect, he'll stop the Ukraine-Russian war in 24 hours. Well, president-elect's gone by. He's been president for over 24 hours, and that's gone by, and he still hasn't solved the problem. And then he sends a tweet out to Xi Jinping or a letter to Xi Jinping for him to solve the problem. But do you really think this guy's a responsible leader? He's in it just for himself. He's just grifting.
Inflation. He's asking OPEC to start pumping more oil to lower gas prices. He said oil prices. That would end the war in Ukraine. That would lower prices of just about everything. So you're hearing the president talk about his plans on a global stage. Also, he would like to cut, corporate taxes in the U.S. all the way down to 15% and saying to these countries and these companies, hey, make your stuff here and you won't have tariffs. You'll have a really low tax rate. Otherwise.
And here's another thing. And you people got to wake up to this too. Now, he wants all the manufacturing to come back to the United States. The whole reason why manufacturing left the United States and North America for the most part, like Canada as well, is because you had 1% and 10% that wanted to create a portfolio of stocks and bonds and get a high percentage rate of dividends and income through their investments. And the way to do that was to take manufacturing to other countries where the cost of manufacturing was a lot less. You created the problem, and you're blaming other people for the problem you created. The 1% and the 10% wanted return on their investment. They got the return on their investment because it meant manufacturing had to get offshore in order to be competitive and to be able to create this dividend stock portfolio and the continual stock market payoffs to the 1% and 10%. So you created the problem. And now you're pointing fingers and blaming it on everybody else. Come on now. You gotta wake up, folks. Sooner or later. Yeah, but that's wokeism. Oh my. Somebody created wokeism. You can sleep. Next state is wake. After you're awake, the next state is woke. Those are the three states of existence of the human being. So do you want to be asleep? Or do you just want to wake? Or do you want to be woke? Think about it. Let's look at it from a different perspective because you've been brainwashed to think a different way in the wrong way. It's been used against you. And you just do not understand how you've been used.
We're going to fight back.
I mean, on the issue of those comments about asking Saudi Arabia and OPEC to pump more oil or saying he will demand interest rates drop globally, does he have the kind of power to?
But here's the other thing. Because of policies of America and him in particular, and all these countries are playing both sides of the fence. Like, it's very interesting to watch the dichotomy. You're not getting all the straight stories. But the fact of the matter is, BRICS, which is Russia, started by Russia. So between Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia, Iran, they've created this trading group to compete against the U.S. and the G7 and G20 nations. And as a matter of fact, their purchasing power potential now, because of actions of Donald Trump from his first term, their purchasing power potential has bypassed and increased as past the United States and the G7. And that's a fact.
Make all of that happen?
No. And next week, the Federal Reserve of the United States meets, and it's mostly expected to not lower interest rates because inflation is still too high in the U.S. So there is a potential conflict budding between the Fed and the presidency. But you're right. You heard the president say he will bring down inflation. He will have OPEC. He will ask OPEC to start pumping more oil to lower oil prices. And he wants the Fed to lower interest rates and the rest of the world to follow with lower interest rates as well. These central banks are independent. They are made to be independent away from politics and the vicissitudes of who is in and who is out of office so that they're just looking at the economics. So we'll see what that fight could be in the days ahead.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. You say that the Fed is independent, but then, what was it, Powell, I believe, when he was the Federal Reserve chief, Trump threatened to fire the guy. So the guy dropped interest rates too low, and then Trump said, well, he dropped them too low, and it created a bit of a problem. So, this guy has no clue what he is doing, except for he knows what he wants to put in his pocket so that he can benefit and the people around him in his immediate direct circle benefit. As long as it makes him look good, he's all in. But all he cares about is what he can get for himself first and foremost.
Do any of his executive orders at this point bring down inflation?
He's got a memorandum of understanding that asks for all the levers of government to focus on lowering costs for consumers. But it doesn't order trucking companies or a grocery store or anything in the pipeline to lower prices. It's mostly, I guess, symbolic, setting the stage that this is a priority in the government.
And Kelly, he really seemed to throw the kitchen sink into his opening comments and throughout, really. He brought up the action on the southern border. He talked about transgender rights, which, again, we should do a quick fact check, because he said transgender operations, which have become the rage, will occur very rarely. They're not the rage. We're talking a very, very small group of gender-affirming operations that are taking place every year. But why bring all of that up at this forum? What was he trying to accomplish here?
Fear.
Well, this is very typical for President Trump, where he uses the bully pulpit and a megaphone and makes it an opportunity to talk about all the things that he thinks are important in terms of policy and culture, and the things that he thinks got him elected and give him the base of support that he enjoys, especially in these early days. A lot of those issues have nothing to do with the group that is convened in Davos, the results of the election that he went into. That's not relevant to them today. So some of this is just the style that Donald Trump brings to his world stage moment. Notably, he talked about wanting to meet with Vladimir Putin right away. That is a stark and important statement, because Vladimir Putin has been exiled in the world community. He is not at the major meetings of world leaders. He is not speaking by phone to many of the world leaders because of his war in Ukraine. And so to reach a point where he would get parity with a U.S. president in a meeting, something that Putin would want very much, is a very notable thing. Perhaps it is the best way for President Trump to use the influence he would have to bring about an end to that war.
Meanwhile, Trump was laundering money for Putin and the friggin' Colombian cartel out of Panama for years. That's why Trump was kissing up to Putin in Helsinki back in 2018. You really have to question what's really going on, folks.
If he chooses to have that kind of a meeting, and soon, as he described it, that's very notable. He talked about his relationship with President Xi of China. That is critical for the competition and the...
And then this guy Trump says he wants to friggin' invade Panama because the threat of China. Meanwhile, he wants to cozy up to China. There's all these mixed signals. You really have to understand what's really going on here. And what's really going on is three people want to control the world order. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Xi Jinping, with a backup cast of characters of Brazil, North Korea, India, etc., and Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. And somehow Israeli situation comes into play. And here you have, Muslims that were supporting Trump because he said he's going to take care of the Palestinians. And what's he do? He lets Netanyahu and the Zionist Jewish movement friggin' still slaughter Palestinians. You really got to question that one.
The global positioning of the U.S. and China, especially when you consider that China has an ability to show aggression to places like Taiwan. So many of these things are about projecting his influence, trying to get leaders to capitulate, to go along, to see his point of view, that whole range of things. He throws a lot at it, hoping he can get some concessions or some negotiations that benefit him and the United States.
Kelly O'Donnell and Christine Romans, thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much. That was Anna Cabrera, the lady with the dark hair. Lovely lady. I think she's living in New York. Living in New York, is she? I think so. Okay, so one more. Another perspective of this Davos situation.
This story from
And
all
away we
angles.
go.
Richard Quest is on the ground in Davos. Jeff Zeleny is at the White House. Daniel Dale is, of course, our fact checker. I want to start first with you, Richard. You are there. You cover these issues in and out. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, first of all, good luck, Daniel, as you try and fact check that lot. I am absolutely exhausted having listened to all of that. It was a potpourri of great hits, but if we actually sift it down to policy announcements that we learned from today, number one, he's calling on OPEC to lower the price of oil via the Saudis. He wants them to lower the price of oil, but at the same time, he wants the Saudis, who've already pledged to spend $500 billion, to raise that to $1 trillion. He says he's now hoping that the Crown Prince MBS will invest $1 trillion in the United States. He's going to now call upon NATO to increase the defense spending to 5%. Now, he talked about this during the election, but today, as I listened to the president, he said, I am calling on NATO to increase the defense spending to 5%, when barely, it was a hard job to get them to the old target. This is going to be very difficult. And the biggie, in my view, the biggie on the economy. He has warned European companies, European countries, manufacture in the United States, and these were the president's words, it's your prerogative not to, but if you choose not to, we will tariff.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll supply you with products. You can tariff while we look for alternative ways of reliable trading partners other than the United States of America. U.S. is no longer reliable. That's the real issue nowadays. The U.S. are bullies. They're not good neighbors, which is rather unfortunate. It doesn't have to be that way. But times come where people have to look at alternative ways because the United States is not reliable anymore.
In other words, the threat, the gauntlet has now been thrown down. You manufacture domestically or we'll tariff the product. And he still seems to think that that won't cost American consumers more.
Jeff, I want to play for our viewers a little bit of what the president said about what he considers his message for the audience.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff.
This is precisely what Richard was talking about there. Now, I wanted our viewers to hear it for themselves. You, Jeff, were with Donald Trump when he went to Davos, physically went there, not virtually like today. That was 6 years ago. What's your takeaway from what you heard?
Look, there's no doubt that the message is largely similar in terms of America is open for business. But what is different, I think, is just the confidence in which he speaks and the delight he takes in rattling the cages of global leaders, from the business sector to global government leaders. I mean, I think saying that, again, urging and calling on a NATO to spend 5% of their GDP on defense, that is something he has said before, but never as president. But I think what we also saw there was something that we were going to be measuring this presidency by. That is the degree to how much he looks forward and how much he looks backward. And there was definitely a mix of that in this. He started the speech talking again about President Biden and still trying to cling to President Biden as a foil, still trying to sort of use the metric of that last administration as a way to propel this one. Well, soon, I mean, this is Donald Trump's government now, so we will see how long that lasts. But also raising the point of taxes. we've seen a flurry of executive actions. Donald Trump's presidency is going to be measured on his legislative successes, and lowering taxes, as he was talking about, the business taxes, the corporate taxes, is going to take Congress to work together. So I think that is something we are still waiting to see the president sort of to see if he can sort of corral Republicans here with very slim majorities into doing this. But also, I think on Ukraine, certainly interesting there, but he said he wants to meet or have a meeting with Vladimir Putin very soon. And we know that his first world leader phone call was at the Saudi crown prince. Of course, that was his first foreign trip back when he first became president. So look for that connection as well. But I think just the degree to which he spoke with confidence, and as you said, Dana, he
MBS, which is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, you know, this is all a grift. This is all paying off. This is money. They're trading, they're horse trading amongst one another at the expense of the people they're supposed to serve. And this is what the population has to wake up to. You got to get away from this ego thing and trying to invade other countries and bully other countries and rah, rah, rah. It's not a football game. You're dealing with human beings around the world. There's people that have feelings, and there's a lot of good people around the world. Some bad people, which is everywhere, but it's very small in comparison to how many good people there are. So understand, once you change the way you look at things and lift the people up from the bottom up, forget about this pyramid bullshit. It hasn't served you. It's created free markets that have created these obscene billionaires. Cost of living, cost of housing, cost of everything to be at the expense of the people that are really the foundation of the world. And this is the way you've got to change your way of looking. Doesn't mean you have to be mean. Do it from a point from the heart in goodness, and get people in office to start working for your needs, to change your situation from a point of pain and suffering to joy and happiness. There's no reason for pain and suffering. I'm going to keep reminding you of that. There's no need for that. You've been led to believe that's the only way to go, and that's totally wrong. That's a false narrative to abuse, oppress, and suppress the people.
Rebels being in front of this audience, no question about it.
Yeah, no question indeed. Thank you so much. And Daniel, Richard said that you have your work cut out for you, so I will cede you the floor. I want to start with that explanation of how tariffs work.
Yeah, this is how the president habitually describes how tariffs work. He warns foreign countries they'll have to pay them. In fact, it is U.S. importers, not those foreign exporters, who pay the tariffs. And we know from study after study and from just our experience living in the world that those importers often pass on the increased cost caused by the tariff to U.S. consumers. So it is Americans who are paying, not the foreign companies. Dana, there were also a bunch of additional inaccuracies, exaggerations, misstatements on the subject of trade. He said it's not fair that we have a $200 billion or $250 billion trade deficit with Canada. Well, good news. It is not $200 billion or $250 billion. It's actually about $41 billion in goods and services. It's about $72 billion, even if you only count goods. And it's important to note that deficit is overwhelmingly caused by the fact that the U.S. imports a large quantity of cheap Canadian heavy crude oil that helps keep Americans' gas prices down. So that's why there is that smaller deficit. He also said the EU essentially doesn't take U.S. farm products. He said this over and over again. In fact, the EU, Dana, is the U.S.'s fourth biggest export market for agricultural products, taking about $12 billion worth per year. He complained that Joe Biden left the trade deficit with.
And this is another thing you have to understand. This Trump is very savvy in one thing: playing the villain, playing the victim, and playing the hero for his benefit at the expense of the people he is meant to serve. And this is what you have to understand.
China get out of hand. In fact, the record trade deficit with China was actually set under the first presidency of Donald Trump in 2018. It's come down under Joe Biden. And he again referred to an electric vehicle mandate, saying that he's determined to let Americans buy whatever car they want. This is, I think, at least an exaggeration. It is true that Biden imposed strict new tailpipe rules that aim to push automakers towards making electric vehicles. Depending on how automakers respond, those rules could require them to make up to 2/3 of new cars sold in the U.S. be electric by 2032. But there has never been a Biden rule requiring any individual consumer to buy any individual kind of car. And then finally, he repeated his claim that he said, I think under Biden, we had probably the highest inflation in U.S. history. Yes, it was high, about a 40-year high at one point in 2022, never close to the all-time record of more than 20% decades past.
Daniel, you are armed with so many facts, and it's so important to have you at all times. But when you say something like, we know this because we live in the world, that was about the most perfect chef's kiss thing to say. Daniel, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, so you people can start living in the real world or not. It's up to you. More pain and suffering, or do you want joy and happiness? Let's go back to the finisher because we got a bit of a small panel discussing what they just spoke about.
Very much appreciate it. I have a group of very talented reporters here at the table. Estelle Herndon with the New York Times, CNN's Phil Mattingly, and CNN's Priscilla Alvarez. Phil Mattingly, your takeaways?
I think the things that really stood out to me were, look, top line, we know what the president wants to do. He's telegraphed it not just his first term, but also throughout the time on his campaign trail. If we've learned anything over the course of the first 72 hours, Priscilla knows this better than anyone, being our immigration expert, he's doing what he said he was going to do. So when it comes to economics, when it comes to kind of how he wants the U.S. to be on the global stage when it comes to economics, he's telling big businesses in foreign countries, you put your companies here, I'll give you the lowest tax rate I can possibly negotiate with Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill. If you don't, that's totally up to you.
And that's the exact same thing that Adolf did in 1930s Germany. The exact same playbook.
But you're going to get tariffs, and you're going to get tariffs across everything. And if you want to know how jittery, uncertain, and tea leaf reading the markets are right now, I had a trader for a fund, a lot of money, fund manager for a lot of money, who texted me during that speech, and he was keyed on when Trump said that, in the prerogative to do business wherever you want, but you're going to get tariffs, he said differing amounts, in just 2 words in the middle of the types of tariffs that he would impose. The fund manager wanted to know, does that mean that it's not going to be a universal baseline tariff? Does that mean that it's not going to be 15% or 20%? That's where they're at right now, trying to figure out if this is a negotiating strategy, if they have one singular number, or if it's going to vacillate depending on the country.
And I think,
Yeah, keep trying to figure out that bull crap. Because here's the thing, these tariffs, that was a strategy of the 18th and the 19th century. Tariffs were a strategy of the 18th, 19th century. You're now in the 21st century. Are you going to go back in time and bring forward what didn't work back then to now and try to fit a round peg into a friggin' smaller square hole? Like, it makes no sense. Like, when this guy Trump talks about common sense, why doesn't he start using a little common sense? Just makes no sense.
I think part of it is he doesn't know, the president doesn't know the answer to that yet, and part of it is tactical.
Yep.
Right?
Tactical.
You were going to say
It's
something
just
about
friggin' bluster and bully.
It is that he views geopolitics in a very transactional way. That's what this really...
Yeah, here's the thing. Everybody's trying to figure this guy out and intellectualize. Forget it. Just forget it. Let him go. It's a waste of time. You've got bureaucrats, deal with them. See what you can do with tariffs to keep trade going as best you can over the next 4 years. And while you're doing that, re-strategize, develop new partners to trade with that are reliable and work with you to prosper on both sides of the trading platform. That's the best thing you can do. That's the best thing Canada can do. Deal with Mexico directly, bypass the United States, build a better relationship with Mexico, maybe at some point in the near future, the U.S. will come to realize their ways do not help the planet, do not help them, and everybody's welcome to open their doors for somebody that wants to work together with them to help everybody prosper. Nobody wants to take advantage of somebody else. But you have Trump that wants to take advantage of others for his benefit first. He's claiming he's doing it for the people, but no, it's for his benefit first. His ego first. And this is what you have to understand. So, the United States is not a reliable trading partner. It's not reliable at all. NATO, if U.S. doesn't want to participate, let them go. Work with what you've got. Let's make the best of it. That's what I think is best for everybody. It's unfortunate that has to be that way, but that's okay. Not a big deal. Sending love and peace to everybody. Everybody take care. Post in the comments section what you think. And remember, you can have pain and suffering, or you can have joy and happiness. And it's just as simple as that. So if somebody's telling you you got to have pain and suffering, if somebody's telling you you can't have a half-decent life in the very near future, if they're making promises based on just spoken words like Trump, because listen, people in Canada, you pay attention to what's going on in the United States. And the reason why I say that is you got Pierre Poilievre that has modeled himself after this guy Trump. You got Doug Ford, Ontario, modeled his way of doing government business after Trump. You got Danielle Smith out in Alberta, modeling herself after a guy like Trump. And you don't need that. You need people that are working for the interests of the people. And that's where we're at. Let go of the old way of doing business. Doesn't work. Pain and suffering, get rid of it. Get rid of it now, and you can start changing things within months. So that's my point of view. That's the opinion with Michael J. And as I said, comment, create some discourse. Let's see how it resonates with you. So do what my friends do when things are getting you down. Relax. Take a nap. Sleep on it before you act. Take care, folks. Love and peace to everyone. Thanks for watching.